Welcome everybody. Thank you very much for joining my session. My name is Marcin Przepiorowski, and that title looks a little bit like the the question you want to ask for everyone, but you are not really expecting the answer, which will be very exact. So what I am doing this talk, this year is actually 20 years in my IT career. So I started as a OS admin, developer in Perl, DBA. Now I'm doing a little bit architecture as well. So over all those years, I was working with different technology, with different people. And I would like to share a couple of approaches you can take in your professional life to make this easier. So let's start with the database. This part will be a little bit admin part, but basically not very deep. So how many of you are Oracle DBAs or any DBAs at all? So what you can see on the screen is basically something which should not happen. So you have 3 different data files which have exactly same names. So according to Oracle, every single file name has to be different. So how do you think? Did I made up this slide or not? Is that the slide that's created here, or is the result of the actual select? Any answers? Guesses? Yes, that's the actual output from the database I made myself based on my customer experience. So if you run the next query, when we check the length, you can see that, okay, the first is 50, the second is 51, the last is 52. So yes, that was a good guess. That could be a space. And actually, yes, there is a space at the end of the file. So the second file, 597, has space at the end. So what happens if we run the next query, which has length, trim, name? That means get rid of all the spaces, leading and tailing spaces. So you see the first 2 files are identical. The last one is still something wrong. So there is no space at the end of the beginning of this file. So when you think about this, it's like, how come? It's almost impossible to see something like this in the normal working database. That's what I was thinking. So that's the reason. So I dumped this using ASCII. So that's how it looks like. It's underscore _1.dbf. And what we have here, anyone recognize? So we have a number 2 backspace and the rest of the string. So yeah, that was quite difficult to find out what's going on. But so we ran the customer project, and I ran transport table spaces script, and Oracle said, "Oh, backspace is not allowed in your script." I said, "Where I have a backspace in my script?" So I started looking into that script. There was just number of data files names. So okay, run again. Oh, backspace is not allowed. Interesting. So then I dumped this using the ASCII viewer. I said, yeah, there is a backspace. There is a backspace in the file name. So if you have the file like this, you will never find out without actually having an error that something goes wrong. So the point of this is how this can happen. Is that someone did that by purpose? Probably no. But if you are on-call DBA, and I was the on-call DBA for 10 years or so, and someone call you in the 3 a.m., your mind is not working very good at this mind. So it took me like half an hour to find the VPN connection, then log in, and then I tried to type, oh, backspace, oh, I put the wrong name, or so. And there are some terminals which actually treat the backspace as a character. It especially happened to the old Unix systems, like HPUX probably is the best one, or AIX, which doesn't set the proper character sets. So then you end up with a situation like this. You can end up with the space at the end, you can end up with the wrong name of the data file. So whatever you're doing with the database, the solution is this. You have to automate everything. Because if you automate the simple task you have to do, first of all, maybe you don't need to execute those tasks anymore. So the automation, that's probably the most important thing for me. The automation can give you the better quality of your work. If you wrote the script which has a bug, you will apply the same bug to every single environment, so at least you will be consistent with your errors. And that's very important if you're troubleshooting this later on. So, but also, improving those scripts means that you have a kind of work you can trust, you can run without thinking, oh, I am doing this wrong. The other thing is the automation can actually replace some kind of your work. So is this something you should be scary about? No, because DBA roles is changing. I don't think the people who believe that DBAs will be patching database forever, that's probably in the near future they will be working for the cloud providers. Doesn't really matter if that cloud will be public cloud company or the private cloud company, but most of DBAs never will do the backup and patching again, because that's something which can be quite easily automated. But there is something which is very close to all this DevOps strategy, is that if you automate creation of your environments, you can quite easily apply the same environment on every single stage. So if you use the same scripts to create your dev, test, integration into production database, you will be sure that you have the same paths, that you have the same patches, and so on. So I did this mistake a couple of times in my life that, we have a patching exercise, I have 25 databases to patch, and I applied the patch on 24 databases because, I am human, I just miss one. And next week we got some tests, the test failed, and I said, Jesus, Oracle is so poor. We just applied the patch for the bug we hit, and it doesn't work again. And the other guy said, no, it's working in our environment. I said, interesting. So then I started comparing databases. I said, yes, I didn't apply the patch on one of those. Okay, Oracle is good. It was my fault. So you have to learn from this that we are human. We supposed to do the mistakes. If you're doing mistakes in your automation, at least that mistake will be consistent, because there is no probably something worse than having different environment settings on different stages. So if your production is using an Oracle _parameter X and your dev is not using this, you don't know what you're developing against, because the behavior of the database, behavior of the application server can change if the settings are changed. There is one more thing you can do if you automate stuff. I know not everyone will agree with that, but you can keep the documentation in your code. I think it has to be a balance between what you're creating as external documentation, as a wiki pages or whatever, and how you document your scripts or your files which are showing your environment. So if you are creating your environments and you try to document later on, there is a possibility that at some stage your documentation will be out of sync of the real environments. So I think it has to be some kind of trade-off. Keep some documentation in the code, keep the high-level overview of the environment in the external sources. And creating automation allows you to create a less technical debt when you are creating environments, because you always have something you have to fix later on. But we'll come back to that. So automation tools, well, choose any you like. The simplest automation tool is writing the shell script. You can use Bash, you can use KSH, whatever. You can write in Perl. How many people ever code in Perl? One, yeah, two, sorry. So yeah, that's the language is dying. Most of DBAs should know it. Of course, you can use Python for writing the scripts. You can use Ansible, whatever, Puppet, Chef. So that basically means that when you have your automation, you have more time for your developers, because I don't need to spend my time doing patching, doing backups, doing all this boring stuff, like installing Oracle database, which is really boring. After I don't know how many years Oracle exists on Linux, let's say 80 years, when Oracle have the version of the Linux. In Oracle 18 was the first one when Oracle decided, we can do RPM, we can install Oracle with a single command. It took a while for them to realize that. But yeah, at least you can use this now, and you can use these RPMs to install Oracle, and if you automate this with the service provision, well, you have more time for developers as a DBA, and you can focus on what Ovid was talking about sharing the knowledge, how the database works, how we should design the application to make this running really, really fast. Okay, let me move forward to the next part of my presentation, the code. So the most important thing I would like to share with you is that you should read a documentation and understand basically a framework we are working on. So there are two cars. They are both German. They are both cars. I was driving Trabant when I was young. I got this car for, I think 8-9 years, and it was like 25 years in my family. So I know how to drive Trabant. That means I know how to drive the German cars. So if I go and take the Mercedes F1, I can probably drive this, because it's a German car, isn't it? Yes. So there are slightly different between both cars. Well, the Trabant still have the gearbox close to the steering wheel, so like the Mercedes. So yeah, I know how to switch the gears. Yeah. So the point of this was there are major differences in different architecture. You have to understand this. So, for example, stateful application, client-server application is not a stateless application. Because client-server application like Oracle Forms is completely different from the web-based application. Well, that means that Oracle Forms is not Oracle IDF. And I was in the project when the application was developed for the 20 years and in Forms. And they, at some stage, migrate this to ADF. So they migrate from this situation when they have the client server into completely new world without thinking. So what is the major advantage of client-server application? You have a session which are connected, and you always have the same session. So you can use, for example, PL/SQL packages to keep your session state. So what happens if you have ADF? If you have ADF, you don't have anything like this. You don't have a session which are connected. You have connection pool. ADF give you a illusion that you have a session connected to you because they have something which is called application modules, which keep the state and most likely keep the session connected to the application module. But the application module in theory can be serialized to the disk and restore. So what happened? We have 4 connection pool, we have 4 application modules. We have 2 customers. Those 2 sessions, from Oracle perspective, always connected to the same session. Pretty much easy. We have now more customers. So at that stage, we have 4 customers connected, 4 sessions are used, 4 application modules are used. So if we add another request, what happened? We serialize 1 application module, but the connection pool, so connection will be returned to connection pool and assigned to different application module. So those guys keep session information about the user in PL/SQL packages. So imagine what happened in that situation. the red guy took over a session of the blue one. And PL-secret package with the states created by the blue one was actually used by the red one. So Oracle was auditing, because we find out this was by reading the audit logs from the application. I log in as Marcin, and I have seen my entries being produced in the table as John. It's like, okay. And we talked with the guys who designed this application, and we told them, hey guys, something is wrong. Oh yes, Marcin, we are not allowed to have less than 100 application modules. So you can't test with 4. And I said, okay, it's pretty difficult to open 100 window on my PC, but I can potentially do it. And what happens if I have 101? Because always, that will be the exactly same situation. Oh no, why not? What is different between number 4 and 100? We don't know. Well, we will check. A day later, they said, yeah, there is a major bug in our product. We have to postpone production by a year. Guys, we spent a lot of 2 years in this project, so why nobody find out there was the issue? Because the default was set to 100. They never actually, so they had 100 connection pools and 100 application modules. So from their perspective, there's always stateful application. Nobody think what happened if you have 101 users there. So the outcome from this is think about, understand the platform you are using. There's nothing wrong with the forms, there's nothing wrong with ADF. They are just different. You can't apply the same logic to both. The next thing is about the scale. So you can see the Eiffel Tower is quite small, you can take it in the hand. But yeah, if you really measure this, it's rather high. So if you are testing your application against small data set, you will never find out the problems you will find if you're testing your application to real data sets. So actually the same project. I mean, I really love this because I learned so many things there. ADF is very interesting tool. You can very quickly create the application, but it also gives you a lot of control, which by default is actually hiding a couple of things. So for example, if you're doing the select, if you're doing the search, ADF can actually read all the data from your database because by default it's not applying the where clause to the SQL you created. It's filtering on the application side, which is okay when you have 100 rows. It is rather not okay if you have 10,000 rows. And this is why we discovered we just load 10,000 rows and it's like, Marcin, our application stopped working. And I said, database is down. And I said, no, database is actually doing nothing, but the WebLogic server, wow, 100% CPU. What is doing? Oh, it was just filtering. So you can see this from the platform itself because platform was showing the one row when it finds it, but it's actually was in the filtering on the application side. So those days, there is a lot of ways you can copy your production data into non-production quite easily and fast. You can build this yourself. You can use snapshot cloning. You can contact me after that session. I can tell you one more thing, how you can copy your data. But basically, there is no excuse right now to not testing your application with the full size. If you're thinking about GDPR, all this stuff, yes, you have to mask your data, but there is no excuse to not testing fully your application. Okay, one more car. So yeah, that's a smart DB. We all agree that if you move the code into your PL/SQL into database, it's running fast. There was a couple of presentations today, and I generally agree with that. But there is one but. If you run this row by row processing, I don't know, 500,000 times, that will be not fast anymore. And well, if you want to have an even smarter database, this is what Frank mentioned as well. You should separate the operation which are used by the transaction when you have one transaction going on and you are doing the payment from the one account to another. But you should have different logic if you want to apply similar operation for entire set of customers. Because instead of doing this row by row in PL SQL, maybe you can write a SQL statement doing this 10 times faster. It's not easy, and I know that a lot of people doesn't like it, but then they complain, our warehouse was supposed to work when we have, 10,000 suppliers and 10,000 different products. And right now, our set of shops increase. We have a lot of shops now, and we want to increase our market by another. We are going into grocery market now. So we expect to have 50, 60,000 different products. And this application doesn't work anymore. I said, looking into trace is like your application is doing a single call, is taking one row, is waiting for processing this one row, is doing this execution again, but it's running fast for a single customer. Yeah, it's running very fast for a single customer. It's 1 millisecond. The problem is that you're repeating that 1 millisecond 60,000 times. So it's not that fast anymore. Okay, so what do we have to do? Oh, we have to change the logic. Oh, we can't. So, okay, that's a trade-off. You can do it faster or have the easier logic. There is no simple fix for that. So, takeaways, know your platform, use realistic data sets and use cases when you're testing this. If you not do it, that you will have a rework or bugs or whatever you call this. So, there is one more thing about database which made me really, really upset for years. There was never something like Git diff for databases. It was very difficult for years how to find what has been changed inside the database. There are at least two solutions I found for Oracle. One is Liquid-based and Owen, what was your solution we are using? Oh, he's sleeping. It's Flyway? Flyway. Okay, I didn't know that, so I have to add this. If you are using Oracle, there is a very cool open source project called DDLFS. And DDLFS allows you to mount your Oracle metadata as a file system. So you can go to your favorite Git and run the Git diff and see what happened, what has been changed inside the Oracle database. It's really cool. And you can open in VI the PL SQL package, change this, and when you save this, it will be compiled inside database. That guy really did good work, and this open source product, I'm using this for the one purpose. Every single day, I'm running the Git add or Git commit, and if developers told me, oh, nothing changed in my database scheme, I said, yeah, Git is showing at least 2 changes. Oh yeah, we have a new version of PL SQL, yeah, so something changed. Because your database is always working until there was a change. The change is always something which is bringing your database state from the running to running or from running to non-running. Okay, one thing which is really driving bananas about the new software development, and I have no idea why it happened, but is like the garbage in your software releases. There are, for example, if you install Oracle Forms, you can find the free Java homes inside the installation. Why free? Free different. Your Android device has 4 gigabytes of the kernel. Jesus, 4 gigabytes of the kernel. My first Linux kernel has 100 megabytes maybe. 4 gigabytes of kernel, that means that they have 4K movie inside, or I don't know. So there is a lot of examples I can give you when people are just taking more and more dependencies. But it's really unsafe. I don't know if you know what happened to British Airways end of the last year when this is what I heard at least, that one of the server copy over some packages, dependencies, and there was a keylogger. So they put the keylogger on the main web page. You can imagine what can happen if you have keylogger on a web page on the large airlines. So, that's because we are creating more and more dependencies which nobody's actually checking what is inside. It's very easy to use, I don't know, pip and install new Python module. It's very easy to use npm, install new module there. Are we really trusting those modules? Do we know really what is inside? Well, I would like to know what is inside my Android kernel, why it's taking 4 gigabytes. I don't using printer typically with my Android phone, and other devices which I plug in there, maybe my USB stick or something like this, but it still probably has all the Unix-based or Linux-based file subsystems which are normally quite required in your laptop, not necessarily on your phone. Okay, let me go to the last part of this presentation. So, for the long time in the IT industry, every time I have to find a solution of the problem, I was choosing one of two ways, but I didn't know why. So, for example, I was sitting to my computer and saying, I know what happened. I was digging into that, and after 4 days, I was sure this happened, but even if I fix that problem, it doesn't really fix anything. So, that can happen for probably all of you. The other approach is you are going to the problem, you are sitting with the problem, and you are starting to analyze this. Okay, you're gathering the data, you are doing something, and at the end of the day, you are going into conclusion, oh, probably that's the problem. So, a couple of years ago, I read the book, Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow, and that book actually opened my mind. It's a book which telling you that your mind is using 2 different systems. The one is called System 1 and is your intuition. The other one is called System 2, is basically when you're sitting back, relax, and stop thinking about the problem in the more systematic way. So the problem is that the System 2 requires a lot of energy in your brain, and the brain is lazy, it don't want to lose that energy. So System 1 is the one which is working first. The problem with System 1 is when you got the idea, it will do everything possible to make sure that you are right. And it's something like making yourself comfortable with your thinking. So if I think now, well, it's a good water, I will do everything now to persuade myself it's a good water, because it's much easier than saying, oh no, it's not good, because now I have to start thinking why it's not good. So this means that if you are working in the IT, you can have a brilliant idea. I have silver bullet for every Oracle database. It's called _run Oracle faster equal to true. Of course, does not exist, but you can have this kind of idea. Let's get rid of the index. Let's add the index without really thinking. If you are Jonathan Lewis or Tunnel Podder, you are probably right with your intuition. Most of us are probably wrong with the intuition. So my approach was basically, don't really read that. It was, okay, I have something I can write down and start basically thinking about this. But the problem is how we make sure we can switch back from the one kind of thinking into another one. For me, it was the experience I got when I was on the customer side, and we got the deadline on, I think it was a Sunday, we had to make the system working. It was years ago. I was installing Oracle 8i on HPUX in the parallel mode, Oracle Parallel Server. And I spent that day and a half on the customer side, 36 hours, trying to bring the second node up, because it doesn't work. And the deadline is ticking. So we did all this work, sitting there, trying different things, opening SR with Oracle and so on and so on. And then I said, okay, it's 36 hours, I'm done, I have to go and sleep. I go to apartment we rent, and I come back probably after 4 or 5 hours with the solution. The solution was the missing package, which doesn't allow us to have the simple ping running on the special interface. But for me, it is, different approaches, taking this easy, taking the break, give me the trick. Actually, force my brain to start thinking from scratch, start analyzing this solution from scratch. So since that time, when I'm working on the problem, I'm working with the timer. I'm setting the timer. It's called Pomodoro technique, whatever. You can use whatever. And I'm setting the timer for 2 hours. If I have a bug to fix or the problem on the DBA side, and I can't fix that into 2 hours, I'm just taking the break. You can take a coffee, you can go for a walk, take a shower, whatever. Just take a break. That means that your brain will switch off your cache. The system won't stop working because you focus on something else. And when you start working back, you can end up with the different ideas. Or the system too can start working in your background and actually give you the good solution. What I also find quite important is you can visualize the problem. If you are DBA looking for performance problem, that was the great help made by Oracle, that you can visualize what happened inside the database. If you are a developer, maybe do the mind mapping, find the connection, find something which help you to understand what the problem is. Well, at the end, try to explain the problem to someone else. There is a saying, if you don't understand something, try to explain this to your teddy bear. And you have to talk so long that your teddy bear will understand what you're talking about, or you will understand that. I am quite old for having teddy bears, so I am using different approach. I'm trying to explain this to a dog, or actually more often to my rats. And that actually helps, because it's something when I can focus on something else and try to explain to myself how this is working. I learned a lot when I did an Oracle classes, because I have to explain how a database works for people who the whole life spent in COBOL. And that for them, the idea of table and the file and the table space was so abstractive, and I have to use a lot of my imagination how to explain that. But then I learned, actually, I don't know how it's working. I have to make sure that I know which example I can use, because otherwise, well, it doesn't work for me. So the last thing is the time management. We know all the DBAs and developers, we are working on the time pressure. But actually, that's everything about the time. If you think about this, we have a lead time before we start the processing, and we have the process time. And then we have a queue, which is a lead time, and we have a service. So at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter if you are a developer or if you are the DBA, you are working with the queuing system. That's the queue. We in Latvia, I probably remember that is 1970 something. You could buy vodka there. It's a Polish shop. So it's all about the queuing system. You have to queue to get your response. And actually, if you think about the DevOps, because that's important, it's called value stream metrics or mapping, that you can basically map stuff you are doing to do it faster. You have to find out when you're spending most of time and try to improve that. And don't forget that if you take the shortcuts, you can end up with a lot of the technical debt. What is the technical debt? Does anyone know that? Okay, that's something which, I don't know if you can see that. Well, probably not. It's too dark. Let's see. Doesn't work. How I can play this? No. Okay. Why it doesn't work? Let's see. It does work that way. Okay. The guy who is trying to replace the bulb. So what he was doing, he was replacing the bulb. It's called technical debt. If you have the things you think you will fix in version 2 of your software, well, maybe they will require a lot of attention before you go to the version 2. So that's all from my side. Do you have any questions?